stay tuned. He's coming up in a second, but first, my awesome dragon teaser here. Hey, Michael, welcome to the Guild.
Hello, Joe. Thanks for having me here.
Awesome to have
My
you.
pleasure.
Yeah, I'm really excited. We did a podcast earlier this year, and it went really well. I got a lot of good positive feedback on it. So, Michael, anything you want to share before we actually get into your presentation with the Guild?
No, I think we can jump straight into the presentation because I'm really curious about the questions from the guys. So guys, please feel free to ask questions anytime. And Joe, please, if you could read them to me.
Absolutely. Yeah, so just jump right into it, and I'll stop you at any point. So if you have a question anytime for Michael, like you said, just drop it in the questions. If you're in the Test Guild UI interface, if you're in YouTube, just ask your comments, your question in the comments, and I'll make sure to ask Michael it live. So the floor is yours, Michael.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Joe. So can I share my screen? Because currently it's disabled.
Yes, you can. Zoom security issues. 1 second.
No
I always forget to share screen option. Okay, how's that?
I just have a few slides that I want to share with you. I don't want to bore you with too many presentations or too many slides, because I would like to jump straight to the demo actually. But before we go into that, so as Joe mentioned, just to reiterate, so at the beginning of this year, together with two of my colleagues, we wrote a book about testing SAP APIs, the strategy and execution, where we basically try to answer five very important questions about the testing of SAP API. So why should you do that? What can you test? When should you test? Who should be doing that? And how to do that? So if you'd be interested, also please have a look at the book. But basically, I will try to demonstrate you some of the things that we're showing or describing in the book right now during this presentation. But let's jump straight into the topic of the SAP API testing. Before we go into this topic, I think it's very important that we need to at first start with describing why the SAP API testing is different than the, let's say, non-SAP API testing, because this is sometimes a bit misleading for a lot of the people. And yeah, I would like to get this clear. So the SAP API, what we see and what we see from our experience is usually in 90 to 95% is usually asynchronous, in opposition to what we see with non-SAP APIs, where it's in most cases it's a synchronous, where we're talking about synchronous calls. So the main difference between synchronous and asynchronous calls is that asynchronous calls are also usually persistent. And that gives us a very, very interesting opportunity for testing, basically, right? Because if the messages are persistent on all of the landscapes, what we can do is we can basically take those messages from one landscape and run them on a different one, right? And we can do that amazingly quickly, and it doesn't require a lot of effort, and it's amazingly fast at the same time, right? So we're talking about a very, very limited scriptless functionality, scriptless or codeless testing. And so this is the baseline, right? The base is that most of the SAP API testing, it's asynchronous and persistent. But then we need to jump into another dimension that we also describe in the book, that there are at least two levels of the or two dimensions of the SAP API testing. The first one is something that we call or is being called transport layer testing. Most of the SAP systems are usually connected with the outside world through some sort of a middleware, whether this is maybe SAP PO or SAP CPI, so process orchestration or cloud platform integration, so middlewares from SAP, or maybe non-SAP middleware, so things like Delbumi or MuleSoft or any other thing. What what can we do over there is that we can actually, since most of those APIs are asynchronous, what we can do in order to test them, we can just take the message from the production landscape, or take a bunch of messages from the production landscape and just rerun them on any other landscape where we're doing some sort of a project, whether this is a migration, a service pack upgrade maybe, or anything else, or maybe any other type of project. What we can do is we can very quickly take the messages from one landscape and just rerun hundreds or thousands of messages on a different landscape. And creating this sort of test basically is amazingly fast. And I will be showing you that during the demo, because the only thing we need to do is we need to fetch the messages and rerun them on a different landscape. So this is the transport layer testing. A second leg, or a second dimension of the SAP API testing is actually the functional testing, SAP API functional testing. So this is the place where we want to make sure that the API call actually produces something, for example, on the backend system. So in case of the SAP, that can be, for example, S/4HANA system. So whenever we want to test, let's say, an incoming sales order, we want to make sure that the sales order got created with all of the fields exactly as they were created, as they should be created. But again, over here, most of the APIs are asynchronous. So we're talking about technologies like IDOCs or proxies. So again, the messages are persistent. So what we can do, we can fetch the existing messages, rerun them, and compare with the existing business documents, right? So again, a very, very quick way. And this is especially useful for, so currently in the SAP space, one of the most typical projects is actually S/4HANA conversions. And for those of you that don't know, maybe, so the S/4HANA is the latest SAP version of the ERP system, and customers having the older releases need to migrate over the next few years, need to migrate their landscape to the S/4HANA. But since this is a relatively in this kind of project, the customers are looking for some sort of test automation, because the user screens or the UIs are getting changed. It's very difficult to do a lot of tests, to do a lot of UI testing, right? Because some of the screens from the old technology, from the SAP GUI technology, are getting changed to the SAP Fiori technology, which is a UI5 technology. Some other old transactions are getting changed, so they have some new fields. So the UI testing is very difficult to perform. But when we think about one of the things that will not get changed, or that cannot change, is actually the messaging layer. So your B2B, or let's say EDI partners, will still be sending you exactly the same message. Your legacy applications, hundreds of legacy applications in some cases, they still will be sending you exactly the same message and expecting the same message. So one of the things that you can automatically test actually in those kind of projects is the API, right? Because you just need to rerun the same messages and make sure they produce the same business documents, or the other way around, you need to rerun the business document producing the output and make sure they produce exactly the same output. So this is the base for the SAP API testing. So the first difference between the non-SAP and SAP is that the SAP messages are persistent because they're usually asynchronous. And the second one is there are two different layers. And from our experience, the topic of being able to test the SAP API is practically unknown to a lot of test teams, a lot of test professionals. They know that they can do some API testing, but they think about in most cases they think about this process in a very similar way to the UI testing. So you have to model everything from scratch, which in case of the SAP API case is not. It's not the case, basically.
Michael, quick question. Does this apply to all SAP GUI applications?
Yes, yes. So this applies to all SAP GUI applications. So
Nice.
most of the SAP systems would anyway communicate through the middlewares, through some sort of a middleware. And of course, there are different middlewares, right? There are what I'm presenting is the standard ones, but of course there are some applications that have their own proprietary middleware, right? So it can work in slightly different way in depending on the application. But when we're talking about the majority of SAP customers, this is exactly how it works.
Perfect.
Yeah. So now how does this kind of testing maybe fall in the testing pyramid? Just one more slide before we get into the demo. So basically, when we think about doing a typical regression, about doing a typical test pyramid in the SAP projects, basically the SAP projects are not doing any sort of formal unit testing, because the SAP software itself is an integrated software, right? So you cannot just test a single function or a single maybe user exit, which are enhancements for the SAP code. What you need to do is you need to test the whole application, whether this is a report, this is a transaction. You have to test the whole of that. Then we've got the integration testing, which is where you actually test the integrated components with each other, and then you have the user acceptance testing. So what we're seeing in many of the SAP projects, whenever the customers want to engage with some sort of test automation or testing or just more advanced testing, they always want to start with the UI and end-to-end testing. So they want to model the whole business processes with the UIs, which we think is very good, but is very difficult. So first of all, the UI testing is very costly because it takes a lot of time to produce this sort of tests. But maybe this is not a problem for some of the companies. But on the other side, this is also very time consuming, right? So you really need to know all of the details of the unit testing, of the integration testing, in order to be able to prepare the whole end-to-end flow. The API testing is, on the other hand, on a much lower level, because we're talking about testing the interfaces basically around the unit testing and the integration testing, right? We're just testing a single component of an interface. So due to the nature of that, what we can do is we can create hundreds and thousands of test cases very quickly. And on the basis of that, we can learn how to do the more complex testing, right? So whenever we talk about that with customers, we're always telling them more or less that there's a lot of customers that want to go to Mars, right? But they want to go to Mars straight on the next day, right? So they want to go to the UI and end-to-end testing immediately, right? This is one way. Of course, you can do that. But the alternative is that maybe at first you need to learn how to fly in a plane, right? So maybe try to learn something easier at the beginning, try to automate the smaller things with much easier if it's possible, and only then go to the UI end-to-end testing, right? So this is the difference. And of course there's a lot of people talking about that, right? So in the book in the latest book that was published by Wolfgang Platz, so he's a founder of Tricentis. This is exactly what he mentioned. He said that right now most of the automation is done for the UI testing and very little for the API testing. But in his predictions, he's saying that the API testing is something that will actually grow a lot more than the automated UI testing, right? So we're just trying to show you guys that it's also possible to automate the APIs in the SAP landscapes.
Like, how old's that slide? Is that recent with the API testing direction?
Yes. So this slide, the book was published, as far as I remember, around October 2019.
Nice.
So a fairly recent slide. Yeah, from the book is called Enterprise Continuous Testing from Wolfgang Platz. Yeah, so maybe what I can do right now is that I will show you some of the demos, and maybe we can open up the Q&A around that. Just before we go into the demo, just wanted to let you know that apart from the book itself, we also have a training which is called Virtualize and Automate Your SAP Testing on the Open SAP platform, which is a free massive online learning platform from SAP. So you can get a certification, a record of achievement for free from there, and yeah, it's a platform from SAP, where you can also learn how to do the API testing. And the training itself has 3 weeks, and the whole first week is only about the theory, so only about the things that I'm just touching right now. So it's maybe for those of you that don't want to or don't like reading books. Maybe some of you prefer learning in a different way. So let me now jump straight to the system. So I will show you what do we mean by being able to quickly create the test cases. So our tool Int4 IFTT is an ABAP-based tool. So it's a certified ABAP add-on, and it allows you to test the SAP APIs very quickly. So let me now show you how do we do that when we go to the IFTT cockpit. So what we can do here is we have the normal folder and test structure. So this is pretty similar to any other test tool. And what we can do here, what I would like to show you is how do we create the test cases and how do we run them. So first of all, maybe let me start with the automation object. So how complex is to create the automation object? So basically, the only thing you need to do in terms of if you would be running the interface, let's say the transport layer testing through the SAP process orchestration, so the middleware from SAP, you just need to supply the service name and a service namespace, and this is it. There's nothing more you need to do. And you can create that using a wizard, of course. You don't need to insert that directly. You can create it for all of your interfaces automatically. So basically, the configuration is very, very quick, very, very straightforward. And how do we create the test cases later on, right? So the main idea, as I mentioned to you, is that we can create the test cases by taking the messages, the real messages from the production landscape, the input and output message, and then we will just rerun those messages on a different landscape. So for example, on the development, sandbox, or test landscape, right? And this will be the test. So the same input should produce exactly the same output, or maybe with differences that we're expecting. So how do we create the test cases, right? So this is, I just wanted to show you how quickly it is to create the test cases, right? So the only thing we need to specify is basically the interface type. So what we can do is we can specify, depending on the technology, whether it's an SAP middleware or maybe we're testing the backend system, we need to specify the adapter. So in this case, we just want to test the SAP PO. Then we have to specify the automation object, so we can copy and paste the automation object. And now the only thing we need to do is we need to search the middleware for the messages that we want to test, right? So what you can see here is that I can select the environment. So this is what I meant, that normally what our customers are doing. So what you can do is you can take the messages from the production environment, because on the production environment you have tons of really good quality messages. All of them should be good, right? All of them are persistent, so we can fetch them, input and output, and we can use that for testing for any other project. In my case, I will be just using the same environment, the test environment, right? So over here we see that, okay, so today I have a bunch of messages, and what I can do is I would like to use some of them for testing. So what I can do, I can just select some of them and try to save them. So I've selected 27 test cases. So right now what the system is doing is going to the middleware and fetching the input and output messages, right, from the production environment. So I will be able to, so once this is done, I will be able to rerun them through a different landscape. and make sure that the different landscape, maybe I have another project, maybe I need to do I need to solve an incident, but this way I will be able to retest my development very quickly, right? So as you can see, within a few seconds, I've managed to create 27 test cases, right? So I will go to the display mode. I can try to have a look at those test cases. Yeah, I have all of them. I can view the content, of course, on each of those test cases. So we have one input message which is actually producing 2 output messages. So a more complex scenario. We can always view the content of those messages, or we can change it in case we would be working on a new project. We can also change it, and then we would have, for example, expected differences. One of the things before maybe I run this scenario is that this sort of testing is also an ideal way for doing the test-driven development, right? Because what we can do is we can also load thousands of test cases to in this case to IFTT, and once the interface before we start developing a new interface or migrating an interface, and then the developer, the only thing he needs to do, he needs to continuously keep on running those messages. So actually, this is the perfect example for the test-driven development, and we're using that in a lot of our projects. So our customers are using that in a lot of their projects. Right, so let me now try to run those messages. So you will see what do we mean. So I just need to select those messages, and then what I can do, I can run them. But of course, I can run them either in the background, but in this case, what I would like to run, for example, is on a different environment. So let's imagine I took it from production, and now I want to run it on the development. So I did some sort of a change, and I want to test it really quickly, right? So I would test it on a different landscape. Again, I'm selecting the first one for the same one for the simplicity. So let's run them. So as what the system is doing right now is it's sending all of the source payloads to the middleware and fetching the target payloads from the middleware and comparing the current execution with the reference documents that I've downloaded over here. Right. So once the system finishes running for those cases, I would get an immediate information, right? So the duration of the API testing is basically similar to the run of those interfaces. So it's amazingly quick, right? We can test. So our customers are testing anything from 20 to 50,000 messages, either daily or sometimes even every 2 hours. So we have customers that are even running the whole landscape test every 2 hours. Right? Because it's just so quick, and you can make sure that your whole landscape is tested correctly. Right? So we see in this case that all of the messages passed. We can have a look at the details. So in the details, we would see that the messages are getting compared. In this case, I have an EDI message. I'm comparing an EDI message. Maybe I can also show you a different one with an XML compare. Let me see. Yeah. So I'm comparing the current execution target message with the reference target message. But I see that all of the fields are exactly the same. So I did a change, but it didn't have any negative effect, right? And this is how quick the API testing is. We just rerun it through the same landscape, and we take hundreds or thousands of messages from the landscape where we know that we have a lot of good test cases. So usually this is a production, but of course, in case we're doing a normal, we're starting with a project, we can also take it from the test environment. Yeah. So this is the main idea of the tool. Maybe if you guys have some questions already, then I can try to guide this conversation in some specific directions. So I don't know if do we have any questions, Joe, already?
I mean, we just have a few high-level questions. First one was it's from Javier. He wants to know, so can we use this to test integration between ERP and Ariba or SuccessFactors?
Yeah. Yes, of course. We can use it in the same way. and we can even simulate some of those systems, right? So depending on the development, where you do the development. So for example, if you do the development on the ERP, maybe it doesn't make sense to test a lot of things on the Ariba or on the success factors. You may just want to virtualize those systems. And so what the system will do, it will emulate the messages sent by Ariba or success factors and send them directly to the ERP system. Or we can do it the other way around. If you're working on the Ariba or success factors, maybe you don't want to involve ECC for that kind of testing, and you can emulate ECC. So in short, yes, it works. It works, of course, for any kind of SAP API testing.
Awesome. Another question. I'm not SAP fluent, so I don't know how to say this word correctly. Does this help in frequent Fourier upgrades, since most of the IDs are not consistent?
I didn't catch the word.
Fourier, F-I-O-R-I, Fourier upgrades.
Fiori.
Maybe it's Fiori.
Fiori. Yeah. No. So Fiori is a UI based technology. So this is UI5, and this tool so Int4 IFTT is a tool for testing the APIs only. So for the UI, you have a lot of you can either use the solution manager test suite for testing the standard testing tool from SAP, or some other tools that are working that are complementary to our tool. So for example, Tricentis, Tosca, Worksoft, or any other UI testing tool.
Awesome. Actually, I was told it's an Italian word for flower. I should know that, being of Italian heritage, but I did not. So next question was, can we also use IFTT to test SAP API management from cloud platform integration suites or any other API management?
Yes. So currently we cannot do that for the SAP API management because SAP API management does not provide any hooks so that we could test this, but we're working with the API management product owner team in order to be able to do that. But currently this is not supported, and it's not supported by any other tool, right? Because it's so the SAP is also working on the SAP on the API management tool in order to be able to support any kind of testing. And once they have this, then definitely we will be able to do that from IFTT, and we're working with SAP to help with that.
Awesome. All right, Michael, those are all the questions. That's it for now. Like I said, you can just keep going with your presentation. I can interrupt as we go, but we have a lot of time left, and I'll let you know when we have a question that pertains to whatever you're showing at this time.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Sure thing. So one of the key things to remember here is that if we talk about those two dimensions of the transport layer testing and the functional testing, is the fact that the transport layer testing is amazingly easy, because we just take the input and output message, and we don't have to worry about a lot of crucial things in other testing projects, like for example master data. With the transport layer testing, we don't care what the master data is, right? We just rerun the same messages and we expect the same results. But of course, this is not the case for the second leg. So for the second dimension, which is the API functional testing. In this case, we cannot just take the messages from the production and rerun them on any other landscape, because we need to have, for example, the correct master data, transactional data, and things like this, right? But there's also a way to do that, for the to facilitate that, just because again the SAP APIs are persistent. And let me try to show you an example of that. So an example of the functional testing. So over here, what I have is I have a bunch of messages that if I repeat them, if I rerun them, they will create the business documents on the backend system, right? So let me show you how does that work. So I just select a few of them. Let's try to run them. And what the result should be is that I selected 7 of them. So as a result, I should create seven new fresh cell sorters. In this case, we're combining the transport layer testing with the functional testing. So we're not only testing the middleware, but we're also testing the backend system. So if we open any of them, apart from making sure that the XML messages are so that the middleware worked, so we're checking the middleware behaved exactly in the same way. What we can also view is that the business document on the backend system is exactly the same. Right, so we can see that the original document contains exactly the same set of fields as the current run contains exactly the same fields as the reference document in all of the fields of the tables, and that gives us a way to work with the functional APIs. And this is especially useful for the S/4HANA conversion projects. So one of the biggest one of the biggest pains currently in the SAP, I mean pains in terms of the testing, but opportunities also at the same time in terms of the size of the project. So these are currently some of the biggest projects in the SAP, or I would say the biggest projects in the SAP world. And unfortunately, there is not a lot of other areas where you can do the any kind of automated testing, because just like I mentioned, the UIs are getting changed, right? But what you can do, and one of the so maybe I will dive into the technical details, and please, Joe, also let me know if it's maybe too SAP specific. But what do we do with a typical S/4HANA a conversion project is that we take the production system, we copy that with all of the data, and then we run the conversion on this copied system, right? So once we do that, we can start doing the testing just to make sure that the conversion worked, and that we can do the conversion on all other systems. But what it means that we actually have a system that has the master data, the transactional data, and the messages, so things like idocs or proxy messages that got posted before the conversion, and now we have the converted system. So what we can do right now, again, for example, with the use of IFTT, the only thing we need to do is we need to select a few hundreds of those messages and rerun them. They will create new business documents after the conversion, and IFTT, the system, will compare the newly created documents after the conversion with the documents created before the conversion. So again, a very, very simple to create test that will allow you to again minimize the number of functional consultants who are involved in testing. And this is particularly useful. I didn't mention that at the beginning, but please also, Joe, do let me know your opinion. Currently in 2020, one of the biggest issues we're seeing is actually that it's not that the projects are getting canceled, that some of the projects are getting canceled, is that some of the projects are not getting started at all. Just because everyone knows, okay, if we start this project, then the budget will be like this, and maybe we would start it if the budget would be half of that, or maybe 2/3 of that, but yeah, there's no way to do it, so how can we do that? Another case is, since the SAP projects are relatively large projects, so they involve tons of users or tons of functional consultants, one of the key things in 2020 is, okay, how do I run the project completely remotely? Right? How the development most likely I can do, but what about the testing? I need to coordinate, I don't know, 50 or 20 of my functional users. Each of them is sitting at home in different countries maybe. So how do I do that? Right? So I think the value of any kind of test automation tool right now is very, very intriguing, because what you can do in some cases. You can say, okay, instead of having the guys running running hundreds of test cases or at least dozens of test cases, let's try to run as much as we can in any kind of test automation tool, and they will only do the rest, right? So at least this is, do you guys see the same thing, that the projects are not even getting started? It's not that they're being canceled, what we already have, but the projects are not getting started because the companies are saying, yeah, it costs too much for 2020.
Yeah, when I worked for a large enterprise, I used to see that all the time with the budgets. Is you had multiple projects you can invest in, and based on it, they would decide what to go with. But not necessarily canceled, like you said, but some would get more funding than others based on that, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what we're thinking, and actually from the let's say product perspective, we're seeing a huge interest in test automation this year. We were thinking that, okay, yeah, since this is a COVID-19 year, yeah, so the budgets, the capex are being cut on everything, but this is not the case. This is not the case. We're seeing the opposite, right? The customers want to do the projects. Everyone actually wants to do the projects, right? Because no one wants to just sit at home and do nothing, right? So everyone wants to do the projects. So the people are just looking for ways how to do it. And test automation, in this case, the test automation of SAP APIs, is just one of the ways to help with that. There's many other, of course, right? But what we're thinking with this kind of approach is that you need to work in a different way in the remote, fully remote world, right? In IT, we already had the remote work for many years. That was not an issue. But the fully remote testing, I think it's 2020 specific. And also, please, Joe, if you could let me know your comments on that.
Yeah, well, why with this tool you think it's more remote though? I would think this tool would work either on-prem or remotely.
No. So what I'm talking about is about the remote work. So consultants working from home all the time, right? Right. In previous years, in 2019, we've never seen projects that have a fully remote testing done. And this year we see that. This year we actually see that, because there's a lot of companies that said, if you don't want to come to the office, you don't have to, right? It's not that even they forbid coming to work, but let's say that allow you to do that. So some people would do that, and sometimes these are the crucial people you need to have, right? So how do we help them run the projects? So this is also one of the ways. And I don't know if you guys also online have experienced the same kind of things. That everyone wants to start the project, but all of a sudden everyone is worried, yeah, but how do we orchestrate it? How do we do the testing remotely? Because development, maybe this can be done remotely, right? This is being done remotely for quite a few years already, right? For a lot of projects. But testing, I don't know about your experience, but from the SAP perspective, before 2020, I've never seen a fully remote project. In terms of testing.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, Javier, I don't know if it's Javier or Steven, there's a bug in my system right now, but they say their team, that happens to their team all the time, and they're remote now as well. So it seems like a trend for sure. And I think it's a trend that's not going away, in my opinion. Yeah.
Definitely not. And how do we live with that? How do we make sure that the projects get initiated, right? So it's not only the case about actually the API testing, it's more like about any kind of testing. And of course, some people say that yeah, but the automated testing tools are not going to replace humans, right? And I completely agree with that. And I think that having smart people is crucial when we're using the any kind of automated testing, right? I don't think that if we give let me give you that perspective. If we give a perfect tool to a dummy, I don't think this will work. So we still need to think about the human part of the testing. Yep. The automated testing tool, whether this is one of the giant companies or this is maybe something small like Int4 IFTT, which is just being used for the SAP API for a very specific reason. It cannot replace a human that is sitting and operating this tool, right? I would also like to get this message straight, right? And we're also mentioning that in the book, right? We need to have smart people running the tools, We cannot have, people thinking, okay, we have the tool, so we just run it somehow. No, it doesn't work like that. The testers are always necessary, and the better the testers, the better the test, whatever kind of tools they're using, right?
I guess the problem is someone sees a tool like this, and it's basically like a sniffer where it captures the traffic and you just play it back, and they think, why do I need a tester? So
yeah.
Why do they need a tester then with a tool like this to make sure that it's actually validating the right things or looking at the right things?
So this is a completely wrong approach, right? At first, so the testing needs to be humane, right? You need to know when do you run the test, what should you select. In case of API testing, this is actually pretty easy, right? Because you can select everything. This is what the tool is capable of. So it's not like the impact analysis is that much important in this case, but you still need a tester who can validate it, who knows when to run it, who knows, okay, how many messages should I actually send? Do I do the performance testing for this as well, right? Because we're also talking about performance. Since we can run thousands of test cases, we're also talking about performance testing.
Absolutely.
So we cannot just let it run by a very inexperienced person and expect good results, right? I don't think this is working like this, right? It has never been the case with the test automation tools. I think in general, right? You need smart people operating the testing tools.
Right, and even knowing that, hey, this is a tool that I use functional testing, I can leverage it for performance testing as well. It takes a person to use that knowledge and get the the best of both worlds actually, and be able to implement all these strategies for sure.
Exactly. Yeah, I think the bottom line is this: an excellent tester, can make use of an even pretty poor tool. Right. So the testing that he will do will be really good. Right. But and the same is the opposite. Right. A dummy tester, even with the most beautiful, most capable tool, he will not make it work. Right. So we need to combine good tools with really good and knowledgeable testers, I think. And maybe this is what actually the industry is struggling a bit. Right. Everyone is talking about the SAP any kind of test automation tools. But not a lot of people, there are some exceptions, of course, but not a lot of people are talking, but behind these tools, we need to have smart people, smart testers, or knowledgeable testers doing the tests in a correct way.
Yep.
Right?
Well, this has been going on for 20 years, at least as long as I've been in the field, so it's nothing new either, unfortunately.
maybe it's new for us, and so this is one of the issues that we're also seeing with the API testing. Since it's so easy to test the whole landscape, the complete landscape, people are getting this. People are falling into this trap that, okay, let's just quickly create the test and we run it, and that we schedule it to run it every day and it's fine. And we're saying, hold on. You need to have someone who knows how to understand the test, right? You need the testers, or you need any kind of knowledgeable person who knows how to operate that, who knows how to validate that, right? It's not that the tool, of course the tool can run every day and test all of your interfaces, but what else, right? You don't even know that you can use it for different purposes. You don't know a lot of things, right? And the tools should just be helping humans and not replace them. I mean, this is the way that we're working with, right?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, would you have any more questions from the guys?
We actually do. Right. First one is I'm terrible with names. Shariku wants to know: can we also automate the business process like OTC process, etc., by stitching the different T codes together, or do we need to use one of the SAP UI testing tools?
So we have two choices here. So actually both of them work. So as I mentioned on the first slide, so our tool is complementary to any other UI testing tool. So you can start the process in Worksoft or in Tricentis Tosca or in UFT and check it in our tool, or maybe you can start with an interface in IFTT and then continue in some other tool. But you can also leverage the power of your SAP landscape. And what I can show you right now is actually you can also model the whole process, because IFTT can also use the standard UI testing technologies of the SAP landscape. So we can use the CBTA, we can use the ECATs, so the technologies for modeling the whole flows, right? And we have a few examples. Let me show you. For example, I think we have so here we have a full OTC process, like so exactly the same one as you've asked for, right? So, and in this case, and in case of many SAP clients, a typical OTC flow would be made of mostly of the integration, right? We have an incoming sales order, so this is the line. Then we have an outgoing sales order confirmation. Then maybe we need to do a single step in the UI, which is an ECAT recording, so a UI testing tool that comes out of the box with any SAP system. And then we're sending an ASN, and then we create an invoice again with the ECAT recording, and then we're checking the invoice that is being sent to the partner. So to answer the question, we can do it in both ways. We can either combine IFTT with any other testing tool because we have an open API that can be run against the tool, or we can model everything within the tool itself. So yes, we can model the business processes in both ways.
Great. Another question is, do I need the basis team to configure the connection between the environments? I was using in the past BPCA, and I had a problem to create the RFC with the basis team.
Yeah. So one of the reasons why we I completely agree with the with the question. This is a really good question. Of course, it depends on the basis team. In most cases, it would work. But what we're doing with IFTT is we're actually asking the customers to install that on the solution manager. So on the SAP box where you already have all of those connections. So let me tell you short how this story works, right? So if you're working from if you have a third-party tool, and if you want to connect to the development, test, and production, this is a big no-no. No one will allow you to do that, right? Because there are completely different rules for connecting to the production system. If you have your own SAP landscape, let's say development, and if you would like to connect this to your production system, again, it's a no-no. No one will allow you to do that in any of the big customers. But there is an exception. Solution Manager is connected to all of those lines. So if you use a Solution Manager will be able to monitor your development, test, and production boxes. So you already have those RFC connections over there. So that's why we're asking the customers to install IFTT on the top of the Solution Manager. So what you see here is actually the Solution Manager, and this way the basis team does not have to do so many activities. So we're using a very well-known trick just to go around some of the procedures, right? That's how it is in the SAP world, right? You need to know how to operate some of the things, and yeah, we're trying to stick to the standard as much as possible, right? It's trying to make sure that because we work for the biggest, I mean, the biggest company in the world are using our tools, so they have a very, very strict policies. And in case of the API testing, you always have to make sure that you obey all of them, right? Otherwise, no one will let you work with your tool. So, and there are no exceptions because this is just a test tool. This is not a tool crucial for running the business. Sometimes if you have a business functionality, the basis team will say, yeah, okay, if you guys if the sales manager or sales director tells me you need to enable this firewall or this port in the firewall, I will do it, right? Because I have to do it. It doesn't matter. The policy doesn't matter anymore. But in case of the test tool, this is much more strict. We have to go with all of the rules. So this is one of the ways how we work, for example.
Yeah, Javier said he definitely agrees. Good stuff. He actually has another question. He says maybe it's a weird question, but he said, but taking your sales order example, can I create test data with your tool? Test data is a big issue with automation, so that's a cool feature if you can.
Yeah. Yeah, of course, you can create that. You can create hundreds of and this is this is exactly what I mentioned, Joe, right? If you have and this actually show, I don't know who has. Can you tell me the name of the person who has this question?
Javier, and he's actually a very experienced SAP
Okay,
user for sure.
So this is what I told you, right? So we need people like Javier, the smart people, to use the tools because they see the smart usages of the tools, right? So this is the best example. So Javier, answering your question, of course we can do that, right? We can create, so just like I've shown you, I can create hundreds of sales order documents that, for example, you can continue running on the, if you just want to run deliveries, maybe you just need 200 of sales orders, and this is how you can work with that. But you need smart people operating the automated test tools, right? So really good question. I think really. So thank you, Javier, for that.
And I just have a question. Javier, like I said, is a very experienced tester, especially I think he's an SAP manager for a large team. Now, is this API hard to use, and that's why you created this tool? Can anyone use like a like SAP UI to integrate with SAP, or is it just this tool has special hooks into it that's able to manipulate the API like the way you're doing with yours?
So, yes. So and also a very good question. So actually, it's two things. The first one is that there's a lot of predefined content, a lot of, let's say, a lot of functionality that can be developed in any other tool. But with IFTT, it comes out of the box. So for example, where we're testing PI, you could model that in any other tool, right? You could send the message to the pipeline somehow. If you know how, it's very difficult. Then fetch the message going out and model that, compare this, and make sure that all of the exceptions are working. It's just that it would be a very very non-efficient way, right, to creating the test. So we're just simplifying that. We're delivering for the SAP APIs. We're delivering those adapters out of the box, right? So we handle all of those exceptions because we go through them with all of our customers, right? All of our customers have similar issues. So this is how we build the software. So this is one thing. But the second thing is that in the SAP world, and this is one of the reasons why we've created the tool in the SAP GUI. In the SAP world, the functional consultants are very far from the middleware, I would say, right? They usually don't get access to any kind of SAP middleware. This is usually not done this way. So it's very difficult for them to test the whole flow, right? So what we said, okay, if we're building this functionality, we should also allow the functional consultants to run it. And since we've built it in the SAP GUI, this is also very easy to operate for the functional consultants and testers. They don't need to use SAP UI. The functional consultants don't. I mean, SAP UI is very easy, right? But in order to create this test in the SAP UI, you would require to have a very complex SAP UI project, right? That would go and send the messages, then fetch the data from the backend system, compare it. Very, very difficult to operate like this, right? So we're taking away all of this complexity and we're giving it to the test teams and to the functional consultants also. So the functional consultants can also run some of their interfaces without going to the middleware, right? So the thing, when I was creating the test cases, the system actually went to the middleware to fetch them. And the functional consultants would never do that in reality.
Yes. Michael, I don't know if I asked, I apologize. Where can people get a hold of INTFF, your tool? Is it free? Is it open source? Is it paid? Like, how do they get it?
No. So it's a normal paid application. So you can find it on the SAP App Store, or you can get in touch with us directly at int4.com.
Awesome. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to make sure that people know how to get a hold of the tool, because every time they see it in action, based on my experience, they seem to love it and like they can't believe it exists. So hopefully it's easy to get for sure.
Sure thing. So I don't know, Joe, we just have 2 more minutes, right?
Right.
Would you have any other questions on from the forum maybe?
Let me just double check one more time.
Answer.
I think we made good time. Those are all the questions we have. So any parting words of wisdom you want to leave the guild, Michael?
Yeah. So guys, first of all, if you could try to learn about the API testing, and don't be afraid of that, right? It's very, very easy. The SAP API testing, the conceptually is very, very easy. But the second thing is, this is exactly what we've discussed. Behind every test tool, we need to have any kind of smart test tool, we need to have smart people, right? We cannot just sell smart test tools to dummies, because it doesn't work. It doesn't work this way. So if this is my wisdom, then maybe I can just leave you with that.
Great stuff, Michael. Like I said, after I spoke to you, I'm like, I have to see this in action, and I was blown away. So thank you so much for creating this, and all your evangelization around API testing and SAP. Really helps the community. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe. Thank you.
All right, talk to you later. Cheers.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Have a good day.
Awesome. So if you don't know, all this is being recorded and will be available after the meetup's over. So I'm streaming to YouTube. I also have a section on my website. It may not make sense. It's under podcasts, but I'll have all the information for Michael there, for the tool, and also the embedded video of the session as well. So you get to watch this on replay if you missed anything, or if you have any questions. The folks at Int4 have been very, very engaged, so I'm sure they'd be happy to answer any questions you might have after the fact. But that's all we have for today. I just want to thank everyone. And if you're in the official Test Guild meetup, I'm not sure how many people are interested in security. I think it's something that people need to be aware of if you're a tester, and it's going to help you become more employable. It's something I hear more and more of, is security testing. So if you're not aware of security testing, I created Secure Guild, which is going on October 19th to the 20th. If you click on the button below, register now, you can get access to register for the conference. And if you use GuildCoin50, you'll get $50 off. If you're in YouTube, I actually have a link there as well. I really highly recommend you check out our lineup. Like I said, it's tester focused. So if you seem overwhelmed or don't think you're an expert at hacking, no issues. This will get you up to speed. And I really think it's going to help you with your career as well. So definitely check that out. So see you all next week for next week's meetup. And I'll send an email what that will be. I'll have to see what's on the docket there. But as always, test everything and keep the good. And thank you all for your awesome questions. Thank you. The things messed up here, so I don't know who the real names are, but Marcelo, Steven, Javier, Adrian. There's a whole bunch of folks. Thank you all for your questions and for joining. As always, test everything and keep the good. Cheers.